Hello and welcome back to View from the Bridge, and I'm joined today by Lauren from UKSA. And as I said in my previous videos, UKSA is where I went when I left the fire service and joined yachting industry. So Lauren very kindly spared the time today and joined us, and I just wanted to talk through who UKSA is, what they do, and perhaps Lauren, where did you come from and stuff.
Yeah,
So
UKSA is one of the biggest maritime training providers in the world. We're the largest RYA training centre and an MCA centre of excellence, but we're also a maritime youth charity, so we bring in a lot of children on the water every year. Last year we had over 11,000 students through the doors. So we're a huge site. I think a lot of people come to us expecting just one thing, especially those coming on the MCA training, and then they realise it's this huge operation. But yeah, I've been at the academy for 7.5 years now. I'm the industry and careers coordinator, so I look after all of our career students looking to go into the maritime industry, whether that's super yachts, flotilla, charter, shore-based, and then supporting them through their careers.
brilliant, cool, that's great. And that's UKSA, and like I said, I was there 20 odd years ago now, and even then it was very much the biggest place around for the training in the industry. And I think it had mixed reviews in the past, but when I was there I had a great experience, really good instructors, and they gave me a lot of strength in depth, I think, because I knew how to sail a boat, but that was about it, and there's so much more to it, isn't there, than that? So
Yeah, it's just about teaching more than just the basics. We always get feedback from the industry about how we can improve our programs to make sure that our students are kind of getting the most up-to-date knowledge and support whilst they're here, ready to actually leave UKSA and actually start their career.
yeah, right, cool. So one things that I wanted to talk about on the channel in general is these people, the people in the industry that surrounds the main industry, if you like, people like yourself and people who live ashore, and but yet also benefit from the existence of the industry,
Yeah.
and I think that's often overlooked. People like to put a negative light on the industry and say, oh, it's disgusting that these millionaires and billionaires have these big boats just for them, and it's quite a naive view. I think I think the best way to encourage to get money out of millionaires is to get them to spend it on nice things, and then we all benefit from it. So can you tell us a little bit about what your background was and how you ended up there?
Yeah, so I actually started at UKSA 7.5 years ago whilst I was at university. I live on the Isle of Wight, but I was going to Southampton Solent studying fashion. I started at UKSA just in the bar, so serving drinks in the evening. My dad was a sailing instructor my entire life, so I knew that he taught yachting, but I had no idea what a super yacht was. I didn't really understand any of it. I didn't know what an STCW was. So as soon as I started, I just started asking questions to people that were kind of coming up in the evenings, socialising. And within about a month, I was offered some shifts on reception. So again, I was very student forward. I was having the opportunity to chat to them when they were checking in and finding out what boats they were working on. And it was just so interesting to me. And I was just like, I want to know more. I
It
actually
is a
applied.
fascinating industry, isn't it? And people, as soon as you say what you do, people are like, oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. Like when you hear that someone works on a super yacht, you're like, what is that? Like I had no idea what it was until I started actually looking online. And then I applied for a permanent job at UKSA, but actually didn't get it because they were worried that I was going to leave when I finished university. So I took some time away and then came back and started invigilating the officers and masters exams. So again, I was kind of finding out a bit about like what is nav and radar, what is general ship knowledge, like what is business and law, and what does that have to do with a yacht. And even though I didn't need to understand the syllabus, I was always asking questions just because I was so curious. And then within about a year, there was a bit of a restructure. So they asked if I would take over looking after the exams. So actually booking the exams, training invigilators, making sure that everything was ready, and then helping out with certificates. So I just kind of wiggled my way in to a permanent role, essentially. Um, Over time, I started helping with the NOE applications. So when you're ready to get your final ticket as an officer or a captain, you also need to fill in a giant application to send to the MCA.
Yeah, took
And
ages.
one day, one of our students just asked if I could help with it, and I was like, I can give it a try. And now today, I've done almost 200.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, it's become my little niche thing that I support people with. I'm actually doing one later this afternoon. Started helping with CVs and actually getting a bit of an understanding of what a yachting CV looks
Oh
like and
yeah,
how to
CVs.
support
I mean, I
people.
get obviously as captain, you get to see a lot of CVs, and some of them are a real disaster. And you think,
Yeah.
this is how you're portraying yourself to be,
Mhm.
really? You know, it's
Yeah.
like,
It's when it says attention to detail, but everything's a mess. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. What detail is this you're talking about? Because
Yeah.
I think that's a really valid point as well. Because if someone sends me a Word document with a really rubbish picture of them and it's badly laid out, and you think, okay, so now I know that you don't really care about this. You're not very good at IT. You probably don't know how to save a Word document as a PDF. You
Mhm.
can't edit text. So not that those skills per se are important in what we do, but those sort of umbrella skills, if you don't have that, if you haven't got that, then that's a great litmus test in itself. And the opposite is true too. Whereas when you get a CV and it's concise and it's on 2 pages, it's nicely laid out, it's not too cluttered, and it gives enough information about the person, and you think, this sounds cool. I'd like to know more about this person,
Exactly.
and that's kind of, I suppose it's the hook, isn't it? The CV in our industry is the hook,
Yeah.
and that's all you're really looking for, and it's a different format to sort of like a medical doctor's CV or something like that, which is kind of war and peace, or some
Mhm.
structural engineer, and they have to get all the information across in a concise way, but to a different format. Whereas we're looking for just enough information and think, yeah, okay, and then it's very much this format now, isn't it? And it's a video interview online,
Yeah.
and we are, 90% of the time you're not going to be in the same country even as the person you're interviewing,
Yeah.
and
It's all about knowing how they're going to fit in with the crew, talking about hobbies and interests. Like I always say to the student, like, if there's 20 of you in the room, hopefully you're all going to finish with the same qualifications, but why would a boat hire you over you? So it is just about selling yourself and showing how you're going to fit in, because it does become your home away from home and you're in very small confined areas sometimes, even though these yachts are huge, your cabins aren't. So how are you going to get on with everyone when you're on board?
yeah, exactly. I mean, when I was looking for a job last time, I thought, shall I just make some silly comment at the top and just say you're not going to read this anyway, and then and but you do very much. I guarantee the first paragraph says, I really like being on the water. I like. I'm a team player. I'm very attention to detail orientated,
Mhm.
and these are the schools I went to. This is my education. This is my, and then you end up thinking, well, the only difference in any of these CVs is actually sort of the last paragraph that says a little bit about yourself. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think a bit of advice to people who are sending their CVs out to someone is make it well laid out, easy to read. You want to see the date of birth and even put the age as well. That's kind of nice and touch, and where you're from, what nationality you are, and then and that paragraph at the end about yourself. I think that's really important because on board we're living together, as you just iterated on there, that we live together, we work together, and you are immediately thrust into this environment of 24/7. You don't go home at the end of the day and have a good old moan to your girlfriend or boyfriend. Go, oh, what a day I've had today! It was a nightmare, because you're there, you're still there.
Yeah. There's no escaping it.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Okay. So we got a little question sheet here. So one of the questions and these are the sort of questions that people sort of ask me, or I think have asked yourself as well. And is super yacht training expensive? Because people often look at our industry, and I think, and a lot of things associated with our industry are very expensive, and people might look at the industry and think, oh, you must have to be, already. You must have to own a sailboat or be a sailor first before you get into it. And so, what's your take on that?
So I think it depends on how you enter the industry. You can obviously just get your ENG1 medical and your STCW, which is the basic safety training you have to work on board. but it is just getting a lot harder now to enter the industry of just that, because almost the entry level on the deck route has become the yachtmaster offshore. So people are looking for that kind of dedication to the industry to show that you're not just going to kind of try it and then leave, and it's not just a way of you kind of just experiencing it. You see this as a career. And even on the interior side now, there's the IAMI guest modules that UKSA runs, which is the industry recognised standard for the interior route. The powerboat level 2, having your jet ski qualification. So it does become expensive, but it is an investment, I think, especially if you see this as a career. The money that you spend is easily going to kind of come back once you start working. UKSA also offers a lot of funding and bursaries, so around 80%
Yeah,
of our
that's
cadets.
interesting. I heard a lot about this now, and that wasn't available when I was doing it. And
Yeah.
but there's quite a lot of that, isn't there, to help people, especially if you're
Mhm.
from a background where maybe you don't have the finance to get yourself through it. But if you could maybe if people were interested, they could contact you, and there certainly might be options where you could help them.
Yeah, so I think 80% of our cadets are usually funded in some way. It's never
80%?
really,
Wow.
yeah, it's never
I
usually
could
like
sell a house.
100%. Yeah, it's usually just about 50 to 60% of their training. So we still want them to be able to save and show that they've kind of actually put the effort into wanting this. It's not just kind of a, here's the money,
A win. Yeah.
that's it. And a lot of it is repayable as well. So once they start earning, they start paying it back. So then that supports the next generation of students. But we work with
Mm.
Edmiston, Trinity House, the Seafarers Charity, the TK Foundation. So we've got a lot of big sponsors out there that are really investing in like the next generation of crew, which is amazing.
Yeah, that is good. Yeah, and this, as I say, there's some big names there, isn't there? And
Yeah,
and I think that's a much more useful, even if you do end up with a student debt as such at the end of it, it's a much more useful one that you can actually that
yeah,
you'll, within a year you'll have that money back and some probably, won't you?
exactly. I've had students that have done their first season and they've managed to save 12,000 just because when you're on board, it's not like you're going out all the time. You are on board, you're working, your food is covered, your accommodation is covered, your toiletries are paid for, so they should
Beer
have
in your fridge
minimal
normally.
outgoing.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
long as they're sensible, they can save quite a lot. So that's always what we talk
yeah.
about. We
Look out for
say,
handbags and watches. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
the thing. We always say, like, think about what you could be saving for, whether it's the next course or if you want to do your dive master or go and do a ski season or travel. How are you going to sustain that and how are you going to afford that?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
need to
I
save a
think
little bit.
when I look at having to, I used to, I have to basically I had to quit a job because you'd only ever get 4 weeks leave, 30 days leave normally in the old contracts, and I think it probably cost me about £50,000 to go from just entering the industry to captain. But obviously, that's spread over 10 years, and
Yeah,
but when you look at it as a lump sum, you go, oh, that was a big lump of money. But it's a worthwhile investment because it pays you back tenfold, doesn't it?
exactly. I know officers that have managed to buy multiple properties that they rent out, and that's kind of how they invest their money. And it is just kind of thinking like this is a long-term career for most people. So it's not
Mm.
just like you're spending all that money and then just not doing anything with it. Most of the time, our graduates do actually go and start working.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said that people could benefit from in the industry when you're younger about some financial advice, and not that I have to talk to you about that, but make hay when the sun shines. When you're young and you're in that role and you've got money coming in, great. But when you're not working, you're not earning, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so it's not like any other career where it's a guaranteed income type thing. There's generally a lot of work around, and if you're willing to work hard and put the effort in, then it's all there for you, isn't it? But if you can just rest on your laurels, get your first job, drink most
Yeah.
of the money, you'll be back where you started in no time. Won't you?
And also, if you're on a seasonal contract and then that comes to an end, you could be waiting a couple of months until you've got that next job. So obviously, sometimes you kind of jump from one boat to the next, but in some cases, you are waiting. So it's how do you then afford that time off, especially when you've been earning all this money? Being back home seems very expensive.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you go, oh, I've got to go to the supermarket and buy food. What?
Yeah. Like, how do I do this by myself now?
Where's my laundry? Why hasn't my laundry been done? Why
Yeah.
aren't my clothes folded nicely and presented to me on my bed?
Hmm.
As they normally are.
Yeah.
And so that leads quite nicely on to the next question of can I work on yachts as a gap year job?
Yes and no. Personally, I think it is more of a career path. So a lot of our students kind of do this because it is a long-term career for them. We do offer the short courses, which are kind of like a 3-week entry-level program for those that maybe aren't 100% sure, because it could be completely new to them. And some people might step on a yacht and be like, okay, this is not for me. But hopefully most of them will kind of go in and be like, actually, yes, I do see myself progressing, and then they invest further. Um,
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a yes and no answer, isn't it? Yes, it's possible to do it
mhm.
but would I advise it? No, definitely not.
Yeah,
And you've got to put a lot of certainly financial investment and effort into getting that job in the first place. And by the time you've got the job, you'd be start to go back to doing whatever you do.
yeah,
You need 12 months just to sort of get yourself into the industry, really in and settled
mhm.
and working and trained up and all that. But I think although it's not necessarily a good gap year job, I think it's a great job if you don't really know what you want to do,
Yeah,
and but you're willing to work hard and you like being outdoors and you enjoy travel and you enjoy sunshine, because inevitably one thing you can pretty much guarantee is you'll see the sun a lot.
yeah.
And
Unless you're on an exploration vessel where you could be in the Arctic,
true,
which
yeah, but at least
can't
then
put
you get
words
to
up
see
in.
penguins and polar bears, so that's
Yeah.
I'd like I'd like that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, but I think as a short-term career, and I say career, because in society today it's great that you can actually you don't leave school having an apprenticeship and then you're a plumber for the rest of your life. You can leave school and now the world's your oyster. So and people are more and more aware of that, I think. And you can certainly leave school, think, actually, you know what? I've done my O levels and my A levels, 18 years old. And do I want to go straight into university and then come out of university 4 or 5 years later with a £50,000 debt over my head and,
Mhm.
and a degree in something that I've now found out that I'm actually not interested in? And then you end up working in a completely different industry to the one you did your degree in, and
Exactly
there's no
what I
relevance
did.
there at all. Yeah, and that is a very, very common story, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you were to get to 18 years old or 20 or whatever it is, then you get to a point and think, actually, before I go to university, maybe I'll try yachting, go and get my STCW, and try and get a job on a boat, and stick that out for 3 or 4 years, and then kind of you've given it a really good go then. And I think it would take that long really to get an idea of what the industry's really like, and then
Yeah.
and then from there you can think, actually this isn't for me, or actually maybe this is for me long term. And I don't mean to be sexist in any way whatsoever, but it's very much a boys and girls side of the world, and it shouldn't be, but it inherently is, because I think a lot of it is that eventually the girls want to move home and have babies, and the laws of biology do come into it at some point.
Yeah.
And but saying that, I've had some great stewardesses that now with the world of rotation, it is actually the career for the girls is becoming a better option, isn't it? That like I say, I've had 2 or 3 that are working for me now that do have children at home, and then and their parents look after the baby when they're away, and they're able to return to the industry. So I think that's great, and that's a really good aspect of rotation where that's available. So, and these girls tended to be someone who've done the first 4, 5, 6 years maybe before they got rotation, uh,
Mhm.
and then started a family, and then ended up being able to come back into the industry again, and perhaps came back as a purser, or and there's a load of other roles there, aren't there? Sort of shoreside purser and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So I think for women in the industry, you're not just there as a toilet cleaner and beds and heads and serving food. There is a career there. But for the guys, I think you can start as deckhand, and then you can see the engineering side, you can see the ETO side with the electronics and the computers, or you can see the deck side. There's a lot of ways you can go just by starting as deckhand. You can take a good look at the industry from that perspective and think, actually, that I'm working on deck now, but actually I really like talking to the ETO and what he's doing. I see what he does and I think, actually, that's really my bag. I know a lot about that already. maybe I can direct my route down there. So I think, but vice versa as well. You could do 3 or 4 years in the industry and think, this is a joke. This is not what it was like on Below Decks. Where's all the parties? This is just hard work.
Yeah.
And I seem to be working 15 hours a day every day, 7 days a week, and I've got no holiday, and so and that can be the reality of life on board, can't it? So
Yeah. I think it's a lot of expectation management for our students as well when they're training, is actually preparing them for the long days and actually them understanding it's not kind of what you see on social media. Everyone always posts the best bit. No one's going to post about what an awful day they've had on board. Some people do, to be honest, and kind of show the realities, but in general, people are showing the fun side and all the amazing locations and all the fun stuff, rather than the fact you're actually working ridiculously long hours, and it might be that you don't get on with your cabin mate, but you've still got to go stay in the room with them at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I recently, Monaco Boat Show this year, I saw Chris Andreasen get interviewed, who's I think a mutual friend, and Chris had a really great point of saying that people who are posting from the industry, who are posting on social media, instead of just putting pictures of handbags, watches, and look at me in Monaco, then actually if they shared, I've done 15 hours today, I've got another 15 hours tomorrow, I've had to get changed 4 times. I had to launch a jet ski. We anchored the boat, we launched everything, that was to recover it all. Then we re-anchored the boat, drove around there, then had to wash the boat, clean it, dry it, and then do it all again the next day. And I've done that for a week, and it's harder work than people think. So, it's not all sat on the aft deck with gin and tonic. I don't think I've ever sat on the aft deck with a gin and tonic in 20 years. So, but at the same time, I think it is very enjoyable, and it is certainly the best job I've ever done. But I think people that I've said it multiple times, but I think people that are willing to work hard, this industry rewards you tenfold if you're just willing to put a bit of effort in.
100%. I hugely admire all my students that go off and do it, and it's always so rewarding when I see them kind of progressing. One of my students from the cadetship 2 years ago messaged me a few weeks ago saying that she'd been promoted to bosun, and it was just, I was so pleased for her and so excited. And then I have students coming back just on Wednesday this week. One of my students messaged me at like 6 o'clock saying, I've just arrived, are you still working, do you want to grab dinner? So it's just those little things where it's just like, I get to catch up with them and see what they've been up to. And at Monaco, I got to go actually have a look around some of their boats, and it's just so rewarding to actually see how they're getting on. Yeah,
that's good, isn't it? What's our next question? And the next one was actually, is working on yachts a good career option as a stopgap before university? And just sort of finishing off that discussion.
Yeah.
Yes, in a way, yes, because you can go and try the industry, and then if you get to the point and think, actually, I've spent 3 or 4 years now, and now I know really what I want. Because when I was leaving school, I thought I was going to do a degree in media studies, but now actually, I've seen this industry and everything else, and I've got a much more. I think I want to go and be an architect or whatever, whatever it is you want to do, and I've managed to save enough money, and in that process, you can then think, okay, well, I see this as a finite amount of time I'm going to be in the industry. I'll try and save as much money as I can, and that will actually finance me all the way through university. And then you go through university, you can even buy a house and rent the rooms out to your buddies, can't you? And that is a benefit to the industry, because we've had someone working hard with us for 4 years. They've got a good understanding of the industry. You can always come back to the industry at that point as well, can't you? And so I think, and that's the yes no answer to the.
Yeah, we also have on our cadetship there's an optional foundation degree option. So some of our students study for a foundation degree alongside their time at UKSA, and then when they're out in the industry, they can then top it up to a full degree. So there is that option to actually do it alongside that training.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? And yeah, I think the training that people have in the industry now is becoming much better recognised, isn't it? By the time you're getting through to your Masters Nav and Radar and Business and Law, you've put a lot of effort into that, and the Colrane and everything else, and you can't tell me that that's not degree level education.
100%.
Yeah. when it comes to age, I started in the industry, like I've said. I didn't start till I was 30, and people looked at me and you must be mad. Leaving the fire brigade at 30 years old, going to be a deckhand on a boat? Are you mad? And what about your pension? And so what's your answer to that when it comes to the am I too old to start in the career in the industry?
I don't think you're too old to start at 30 plus. We've had students that are in their 40s that have come in and are like, this is kind of complete career change for me. But we also have 18-year-olds kind of straight out of school coming to do it. I think it's just very much about your work ethic, your drive, if you're ambitious enough, and if you do see it as a career, like we've said already, it is hard work. So I think it is just, are you willing to give it your all? And if so, then there should be nothing holding you back. There are boats that kind of prefer someone that's a bit older, that's got some life experience and work experience behind them, and long periods of work experience, not just like a short-term part-time role whilst you're at school, because it shows that you're not going to be out partying every night, hopefully. Obviously, some boats kind of are very against that culture and they want people that are actually a bit more mature. Again, it can depend on the owner and what the owner wants. So some people want that 18-year-old that's
and I think it's worthwhile saying as well, isn't it, that different boats have a different personality. The crews have a different personality. Some boats are quite a party boat, and maybe that feeling comes from the owner, that he wants to see people full of life and beans and going out and having a party and a good time and just let's go crazy, and I've been on boats like that with owners that really genuinely encourage that sort of thing, and I've been on other boats where people they just want people to be chilled out, laid back, cool people, but they want to see people that are healthy and take exercise seriously and things like that, and everything in between, isn't there? So there's lots of different boats, and different boats look for different people. There's not always that we only want people who are 20 years old with a degree, and that's very much not the industry. I think there's a boat for everybody out there. There's old boats, new boats, wooden boats, metal boats, fast boats, slow boats, and also, as many different boats as there are, there's as many different owners as well who are looking for different things. We work for the British, the Americans, the Arabs, the Russians, you name it, we work for them. And so there's lots of different, and sometimes even, for example, before the war, there was there were a lot of Russian employers. Some of them wanted Russian speaking crew, and others definitely didn't want anyone who spoke Russian, did they? So that's changed a bit now, but it goes to show the difference, isn't it? But I think from a captain's perspective as well, when I'm hiring, and if I see, for example, that someone had left school and gone to work in a local garage as a mechanic, and had done 3 years there doing an apprenticeship or just working, as a junior mechanic, and I'd hire that guy over the guy with a degree in media studies straight away, and because this person is obviously quite good with their hands. They're mechanical. They know what a spanner looks like. They know which way around to hold it. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. They're not going to come on board and start breaking stuff for me, which I then have to replace. So I think if there's someone out there looking at the industry who is in a hands-on job, a practical job like that, you stand a really good chance of getting a great job. Things like carpenters, if I see someone who's got skills like carpenter, plumber, electrician, car mechanic, motorbike mechanic, anything like that, you think, oh, that guy.
It's the trade skills that can really transfer on board, and that's what we always say to them. And they're like, I don't think it's relevant. I'm like, it is, honestly, especially if you're going on like a classic boat. Have you been doing carpentry for a long time? Like, are you going to be able to handle the teeth properly, things like that, and understanding of the product. So again, that's kind of what we try to highlight.
Left university, and they got a degree in electronics or communications or computer studies. That kind of, there's that side of it as well. It doesn't have to be just with your skills with your hands. A lot of skills are transferable. If someone's been working in a restaurant for 5 years and they've become the head of the restaurant manager or whatever, that again, you go, wow, that straight to the top of the pile. That's CV, because they know what hard work is. They know what putting the hours is like, and they know about customer service and how to
They've
deal with,
probably managed other people.
yeah, and keep smiling when
Yeah.
you're having a bad day. Yeah.
Mhm.
So next question, what courses are available to people?
So there's a huge variety. Again, the entry level is just the STCW, but we run at UKSA a 3-week deckhand course, which includes your STCW, your powerboat level 2, your jet ski license, your tender operator. You do a week of deck skills, so actually getting some kind of actually hands-on deck skills, rope work, splicing, teak maintenance, stuff like that. And then the cadetship or the professional yacht master offshore, that's like an intensive 3-month or 5-month program for the cadets where you're at UKSA for 5 months, essentially either in the classroom or on the yachts, gaining the miles to sit your final exam.
That's
But
what I did, I think.
yeah,
I arrived with nothing and ended up with a yacht master. And
yeah, and some people look down on that because they think like, how can you learn that in that amount of time? But they're here for 5 months working so hard. Like you can learn so much
yeah,
in
I
that
agree.
time.
They call it the zero to hero, and actually, so I see it now weirdly advertised as zero to hero in some places, but it's
Yeah,
not. You're not
that's
going
not
zero
the
to hero. But what
case.
you're getting is a good building block of skills. As
Yeah.
long as you don't turn up and think you're going to be captain on day one.
Exactly. It's reminding them like you're getting the basic skills. Like when you step on a yacht, you're still not going to know much. So be prepared to just kind of absorb everything possible, listen, ask questions.
Yeah, it's like
And
people
then,
say when you learn to drive, when you pass your driving test, that's when you learn to drive after you pass your
yeah.
driving test.
And then it's the same with the interior route. We do a 5-week course at the moment, which includes the STCW again, your powerboat driving. At the moment, the girls are currently going on to one of our yachts for a few days, so just doing some day sailing to get a basic understanding of terminology, coming alongside, helping out with mooring and anchoring. They do the guest modules, so the IAME accredited Introduction to Yachting,
Can you
bartending,
talk a little
mixology.
bit about the guest? Oh, a guest isn't a guest, is it? It's
No. So they call it the IAME guest route. So IAME accredited body by the MCA to run the deck modules and also the interior modules. So obviously with the deck, there's a completely structured pathway to get your final ticket because of all the safety requirements on board, obviously. But there was never that for the interior route. So they've created the guest modules, which are obviously like guest facing. Um, and there's an introduction unit, which is 2 days, which kind of goes over all the basics of the industry. So the demographics, the hierarchy on board, structuring your CV, finding work, etiquette, interacting with guests, all the basic stuff. And then there's the junior modules, which are housekeeping, laundry, basic food and beverage service, the mixology, the wine appreciation, and over time they can then top that up with more advanced modules. So barista training, floristry, cigar service, and it works all the way up to a purser module. And there's also now modules for shore-based crew. So there's an owner's representative program that they've launched recently. So it is becoming more recognised
I saw
across the
that, yeah,
industry.
and those other roles now there's a qualification for that. People are going to start asking for that qualification, aren't they?
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a bit like when the ETO that sort
exactly.
of became a recognised role within the industry, didn't it?
And
Which wasn't always there.
we're actually working with Mimo Connect to start launching an ABIT module so that our students can go in with a basic understanding. So if they're going onto a small yacht, can they fix the blinds or the Wi-Fi and the little things? So actually just having that additional skill set could be really valuable for them.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure you could pick up some real gems of knowledge there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, cool, great. Um, so next question. Below decks looks great. I can't wait to join. Where do I sign? So I think everyone in the industry hears this all the time. Oh, below decks, yeah, I've seen that. It's great, I love it.
Mhm.
And my friend was the chief stew, Adrienne, in the first series, and she phoned me at the time saying, "Oh, do you want me to put your CV in? We've no, not really. It's going to be on telly. No, you're right."
Yeah.
And glad I didn't. But I do know a couple of other people that have been in it now,
Mhm.
and hopefully I'll get to interview them further down the line as well. And I think like anything with the TV, the actual person's quite different. And certainly for example, Adrienne,
Yeah.
she didn't come across as the person I knew. The person
Yeah.
I knew was one of the kindest, nicest people you could possibly meet. Her and I did a road trip in the States together once with me, her, and a little French dog poodle thing, and
Mhm.
bulldog, and it was great. We had such a laugh, and she's one of the best people I've ever worked with. So and I didn't really see that side of her come out in that at all. So yeah, interesting. But
Yeah.
what's your take with the below decks?
Well, I think it is one of those things. If you say you work in the superhero industry, everyone's like, "Oh, so like below deck," and it's like, "Oh, yes and no." Like, obviously, you see a snapshot of it, but I always say to people, their season is 6 weeks, an actual season is 6 months. Their charters are 48 hours. It's very rare that you'd ever have that. The tips are given out in cash in hand at the end of every charter, which is sometimes happens on a yacht, but usually it's kind of obviously paid into your salary at the end of the month or at the end of the season. So it's just kind of again managing those expectations of what they've signed up for. Um, we work quite closely with Conrad Empson, who was on Below Deck Med a few years ago, and he's great. He'll always answer all the questions that the students have and kind of tell them like, this is what it's actually like, this is what happened, this is the reality of it. Um, I think it's definitely brought a light to the industry and shown more people that the industry exists.
Yeah, I think I agree, and it's one of those things that's it's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's shown it's highlighted it that the industry's there for some people. I thought, and people look at it, and go, "Oh, that looks good. I'll go and give that a go."
yeah,
And other people perhaps were not attracting the right people sometimes.
yeah. So it is just kind of when our students arrive, like if that's what they've kind of seen and that's the drive for why they've joined the industry is actually, have you made the right decision to be here and how can we make sure that you're actually prepared and that's not what you think you're going into.
Yeah,
Obviously, some of it is true. They do work the long hours. They do work with some difficult charter guests, but in general, they are kind of picking people for the drama. And obviously, on a yacht, that's the exact opposite of how people hire. They want people that are going to get on harmoniously and not have issues.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. The moment I see anything in someone's CV, and I think drama queen,
Yeah.
yeah. So, how long till I'm captain? That's the next question.
So obviously, you've done this yourself. You've kind of gone through those progression modules. With our cadets, it's a structured pathway to the Officer of the Watch, but you can do it from any level. You don't have to do the cadetship to do it. You could start as just a junior deckhand with your STCW. You have to obviously have 36 months sea service to be able to get your Officer of the Watch, which is the first step. But that obviously includes a lot of further training. So your master offshore, your obviously in-date STCW. You've got to have your efficient deckhand training, which you have to have 6 months on board to be able to do that course, and then you have to hold that for 18 months before you can sit your officer's ticket. Then there's your long range radio course, so the GMDSS. You've got your helm, which is leadership and management. You've got ECDIS training, GSK, nav and radar. It's not just kind of oh yeah, I'm going to be a captain.
Yeah,
And we always say to people, if you've done your yacht master, you're not a captain. You could be a skipper, but the captain's title is saved for those that have actually done the master's modules.
yeah.
Um, and
Suffered,
then
suffered through those books.
yeah, and then obviously once you've got your officer of the watch, you can get your chief mate. You can kind of do that straight away if you want to, or some people wait a little while. And again, it includes additional training. And then once you've got your officer's ticket, that 36 months wipes clean, and you have to get another 36 months to be able to get your master's modules. But we say that it's 36 months, which is 3 years, but actually, when you factor in you're going to have time off, people might have a rotation, you're going to need the time off for training. It's not going to take 36 months. Realistically, the minimum to get your officer's ticket is 4 years, 4 or 5, and then again to get your captain's license after that, it is again another 4 or 5 years because you've got to factor in the time off and the time for training and actually being able to learn the role rather than just rushing through it.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point about rotation, isn't it? That what people with rotation now, because when I was doing it, it was basically as a 30 days leave, and the rest of it you're at sea or working, or you're employed on the yacht. You're either in port or at sea, so it was reasonably easy for me to get that sea time, and so when I got the sea time, I was doing the modules and I'd progress through, do the exam. But I see now that some deck crew or just some junior crew are on time for time rotation.
Yeah,
So
or even
you're
if
actually
they
only
work.
working 6 months a year, so you've now doubled your time.
Yeah, because I think they forget, like, yes, the rotation is like the dream for some because then you get that time off, but you then got to spend more time to progress. And I even had a chief stew that was from the island come in a few weeks ago, and she's finally got a 3-3 rotation. And she's got home and she's just like, what do I do with myself? My friends are working 9 to 5. They've got kids, they've got families. I can only really see them in an evening or a weekend. So
Mm.
she was just like, okay, well, I'll probably book another course or do something else because it's great to have that time, but unless you've got something to come back to, you've kind of just got that time by yourself.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think, as you say, rotation for further down your career is great,
Yeah,
and it's been a game changer for me. And it's allowed me to do this, without having rotation. There's no way I'd have enough time to start a
yeah,
YouTube channel and learn how to turn a camera on and point it the right direction, and that I can sometimes do. And but there's so much. It allows you to progress to kind of the next level in a way in other places, but also allows you to have a family and allows you to spend time at home with the family, and which then in itself allows you to stay in the industry longer or to stay
yeah.
on that one boat longer. So
Hmm.
I think for senior crew, definitely rotation is incredibly valuable and is highly sought after. Certainly time for time rotation. So, and what I mean by that is what I work is 10 weeks on, 10 weeks off, and it's fantastic. Um, and But for junior crew, I would say, well, we for our junior crew on our boat, we do a 3-1 rotation. So you do 3 months, 1 month off, which I wouldn't work any. I wouldn't if I were saying to people, don't take a job that offers you more leave than that, which is a weird thing to say.
Yeah,
But
because if you're wanting to progress, you need that time on board.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, for example, if you're a stewardess and you've been in the industry 2 years and you're not actually that interested in doing any more qualifications or anything like that, then yeah, by all means. But certainly, I think for deck crew, engineers, anyone that's trying to work their way up through the industry, you've got to have that time on board. You've got to have the sea time. You've got to be employed, and you've got to be working, and you've got to get the experience. Because
Yeah,
the experience that counts. It's without the experience, there's no. You can have the ticket, but if you haven't got the experience, you're useless.
yeah,
And,
100%.
and somebody once had said to me the very wise words of "Be careful what you wish for." And you can get the ticket, but just because you've got the ticket doesn't mean necessarily that you should be taking that next job.
Yeah. And some people, I've known officers that have got their OOW, but then they've kind of gone back in as like a bosun or third officer just so that they've got someone above them still because then maybe not yet ready enough to kind of step into that senior position.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And certainly in the fire service, you are generally qualified one job above where you were.
Hmm.
So that then on the fire ground, if something happened or if somebody didn't come to work because they were sick, the wagon could still run because you could still turn out to fires because you're generally qualified for the role above yours. But just because you're
Yeah.
qualified to do that doesn't mean necessarily that you're ready to do that. So
Hmm.
be careful what you wish for, because for example, once you step up to chief officer and you've been chief officer on a boat, you don't then want to go back and be a bosun again.
Yeah.
So once you step up, you've stepped up, and it's like the step below you gets taken away, so
Hmm.
you can't go back down again. So I mean, you can obviously, but if you were to go back down again, then you'd be looking at the person above you, thinking, I wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit like becoming captain. Be careful how there's guys out there, and some of the best captains that I've seen come up through got their Masters 3000 and I wouldn't say didn't do anything with it, but stayed as chief officer and turned down captain's jobs because
Yeah.
they wanted to get, because they maybe, I know one guy started in the industry at 18. By 28, before he was 30, he had his Master 3000. And he said, look, Rich, I haven't actually got the life experience, to be honest, and I'm quite
Yes.
enjoying not having that level of responsibility, because he's quite happy being chief officer, but didn't want to be captain yet. And that was very wise, I thought. Yeah.
Hmm. There are, because you can get your officer's license by like 22, and it's crazy. Like I have friends that are 22, 23, and I'm quite a bit older than them. And I'm like, God, you could literally be like the officer on a yacht that's up to 3,000 gross tons. It's insane to think that that could be them.
Yeah. So, yeah, don't try and run before you can walk is the advice
Yeah.
there. Even though someone gave you the trainers, don't go for a run yet.
Yeah,
Because,
especially if you're not ready.
yeah. Because and you'll end up doing yourself a disservice, and you won't do the job very well, and you will actually you could ruin your career by doing that, couldn't you?
Mhm.
So next question. I hear there's loads of money and tips. How much will I earn?
So again, it depends on the boat. As a junior crew member, we say the entry level salary is anything between €2,500 to 3,500. I've had one of my students this year who started on 2,500, but then actually took a pay cut to join his dream yacht because it was doing all the race circuit, and that's kind of what he's fully invested in. So he was happy to take that lower salary. But I've also had students that have gone in at 3,750. So it does just completely depend on the yacht, on the program. Obviously, as you progress, the money goes up. But I think some people kind of do a year and they think it's just going to suddenly jump massively, and it doesn't necessarily do that. And then with the tips, again, if you're on a private yacht, you're not guaranteed tips, but sometimes the owner's friends might tip you if they've been on board for a while, or you might get a nice Christmas gift or a bonus at the end of the year. Obviously, on a charter yacht, tips are kind of known as the standard, but again, people don't have to tip if they don't want to, especially if the service they've received isn't what they expected.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember I did a very hard charter once, and we didn't get a tip. And after that, I was like, I'm so over this charter work.
yeah, it's like I had one student who I met last year in Antibes, and he just finished a 2 week charter. The lady that had hired the yacht, she spent most of the time off the yacht just at beach clubs, but she took her Shih Tzus with her on the yacht, so they were dog sitting for 2 weeks. And at the end of the charter, each crew member got tipped €6,800, which I was just like, that's insane. That's like 3 months worth of my salary that you've just been given for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So yeah, some of the tips can be incredible, others obviously slightly lower. So again, it's hard to kind of
yeah.
comment
I
because
do
each
think
boat is so different.
the charter work is, when I worked on the charter boat, and back then it was, 15, 18 hours a day, every day, and the guests might get off, and if there wasn't a charter coming, the boss would be there the next day
Hmm.
on the dock, and you kind of had 6 hours to turn the boat around, and then boss on, right, let's go, and now full on guest trip, and he'd use the boat until the next charter was on, and then and it was just non-stop, and I don't think I've ever been so tired.
Yeah,
And then have to get up in the morning, smile, shave, and tuck your t-shirt in and put on the show. It's
yeah.
a lot of the people that I joined the industry with were super keen to get into charter because of the money, and
Hmm.
none of them are in the industry anymore, and they all got
Yeah.
charter boats. So then, but I was very much just my goal point was actually just to work for a good captain,
Hmm.
and I wanted to learn, and I realised that I had a sort of finite amount of time because I was on the older side, that I needed to learn as much as I could, get my tickets done as soon as I could. So that was kind of because I knew I wanted to be in the industry for a long time.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then on the money side, do I have to pay tax?
Again, it depends on your circumstances. As a UK passport holder, you're exempt from tax if you're out of the UK for 180 days of the year, but you do still need to complete your tax return, which we always tell our students. For other passport holders, it's completely different, so we can't advise, and I'm not an expert in it, so I don't want to comment on it too much.
Hmm.
But yeah, a lot of our students are UK passport holders, British residents, British citizenship. So after they've kind of been out the UK for the entire season, or they're doing a dual season, they are exempt. But again, tax return is super important, and
Yeah.
making sure you stay up to date with that.
Yeah, again, we're not here to give any financial advice,
Yeah.
and definitely talk to your accountant, because I think it's known as the Seafarer's Allowance, and
Mhm.
you have to be employed for 12 months before you're entitled to it. So, for example, if you did a gap year, you went and did a season's work came back, you'd have to pay the tax on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of those things. Don't be naive about tax. Make sure you
Yeah.
get good advice. There's
We
plenty of
work
companies
really
out there that
closely
do
with
it.
Crufo, so the Crew Family Office. We've
Okay.
been working with them for a long period of time, and they're great. They come in and speak to our students, and a lot of our students get discount with them, which is fantastic. So we always recommend they actually speak to someone that is clued up and an expert in it, because again, we can't advise on that too much.
Yeah, I agree. And some of the best advice I would give as well is that A, get your tax sorted. B, get a financial investment vehicle that you can put
Mhm.
money into for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
Whereas some people might have a work-based pension scheme and things like that. In our industry, it's a very flexible industry. You can pick it up and put it down. You can take 6 months off. You can work here, you
hmm
work there, and that flexibility for me is what I find interesting. But you're constantly sort of changing employer every 4 or 5 years and moving around doing different things. So you can't rely on anyone else. You've got to take care of that. You've got to sort out your own investments. And if you do that properly, if you start this job at 20 years old and you do that properly, you can probably retire by 40.
yeah, which is wild.
Yeah. But and you'll have had a great time doing it, you know.
Mhm.
But that would take a lot of discipline
Hard
financially
work. Yeah.
and tucking enough away. But yeah, wish I'd listened to that advice 20 years ago. But then I did have a good time. Um, so next question: do I get my own cabin?
When you're the captain, usually. Other than that, you're going to be sharing all of our accommodation at UKSA, because it is a kind of all-inclusive site. You train here, you eat here, you sleep here. Everything is in kind of one place. So all of our accommodation for our junior crew is bunk style, so they kind of get used to that. But we always say our rooms are almost a bit more spacious than it would be on a yacht.
Hmm.
Even though your cabin on a yacht might be a little bit more luxurious, the space you have is going to be very limited.
Yeah.
Um, I went on one yacht my first year at Monaco Yacht Show, and it was a sailing yacht, it was a Perini Navy, and my friend's cabin was also the laundry room, and her bed
Nice,
folded down
nice.
in the evening. But then I've also seen crew that have got quite a nice spacious cabin with the ensuite. Um, you might have a cabin where only one of you can stand on the floor at one time.
Yeah, been in it.
So
Yeah, I had
yeah,
three of us in one cabin. Yeah.
yeah, it is just again dependent on the boat, if it's a sailing yacht, a motor yacht, but until you've kind of worked your way up, it's very unlikely you're going to be sleeping by yourself.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that the boat is built for the owners. It's not there for the crew.
Yeah.
And you're paid well in this
hmm
industry for a reason. You know,
Yeah.
if it was sat around on the aft deck sipping gin and tonics with the owners, you know, you wouldn't get paid anything like like you do.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like water sport. You know, being a water sports instructor and sailing is a much more enjoyable job, to be honest. And you spend a lot of time on the beach hanging out, and that's why it's not paid very much. Whereas
Yeah.
on our side of the industry, there's a lot of hard work goes into it, and there's a lot of sacrifice, and you cannot escape. There's maybe on a 60 odd meter boat that you could be there with 22 other crew in a very small space, because although the boats look big, the crew area is very small,
Yeah.
and it's actually the legal minimum is what you tend to get,
hmm
and that goes for the crew mess, the crew cabins. There's two of you in a cabin. I would say that by the time you get to chief engineer, the chief engineer would normally, on a bigger boat, certainly have their own cabin. Sometimes the chief stewardess has her own cabin, or steward. And so heads of departments, not uncommon that they get their own cabin, but you'd hope the captain does. Yeah.
Yeah. And we always kind of remind our students, like, keep your space tidy. Like, this isn't just your space, you're sharing it.
Yeah,
So
really
our
important.
cadets have,
Yeah, to respect the environment that you've been
yeah,
given.
because you'll have room inspections on board. So we implement that with our cadets from day one. So they
Right.
have weekly room inspections to make sure that they're actually making their bed in the morning, their space is tidy. And again, it's just about having that respect for other people.
Yeah. Also, not breaking the cabin. You know, so
Yeah.
inevitably on a boat, everything on the boat is expensive, and we recently had a thing where something fell out of someone's toilet cabinet, and fell and hit the sink and smashed the sink. And and you know, but maybe that was our fault because there wasn't a fiddle there across stopping it falling out in a way. But to have the foresight to think, okay, this cabinet hasn't got anything to stop big metal things falling out of it, so maybe I shouldn't put big metal heavy things in there in the first place, you know.
Yeah, it's just that awareness of
Yeah,
like spatial
yeah,
awareness of what's going on.
yeah, and to clean your hair out of the bottom of the shower yourself, because ain't
Yeah.
nobody else going to do it for you.
Mhm.
And the to respect the fact that that's just as much somebody else's space as your space, and that's arguably one of the hardest parts of working in the industry, I think. And I've always pushed very much for privacy curtains, and
Mhm.
even on smaller boats, because you know you can't get away from it, can you, when you're on a boat like that, and if you're having a bit of an intense time, and maybe you're going through an emotional period in your life for whatever that reason is, and you just want to go to your cabin and have a moment to yourself, and then other people are walking in and that oh, you just, at least with the privacy curtain, you can just pull the curtain across, can't
Yeah, and just
you?
ignore
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. So yeah, a curtain can mean a lot, can't it? So next question: do I get to use the jacuzzi?
Well, if the boat has one, very rarely you might get that opportunity. In general, the guest areas are kept for the owner and the guests. It's very unlikely if you've got those amenities that it's going to be available for the crew. You might have an owner that's super relaxed and says like when we're off or off season you can use it, but quite often it's going to be drained out and it's not going to even be in use. So I think
Yeah,
it's just having that awareness that the space isn't yours. Like yes, it's your home, but it's inevitably the owner's yacht. It's
yeah,
not
yeah.
yours to use.
I've been surprised the amount of people in shipyards when I've done builds. People are actually building a boat in the shipyard. They've made comments that suggest that the crew will be using the guest areas when the guests aren't there, and I was blown away by that. Are you
Yeah,
kidding me? We spend all of our time cleaning these areas to the nth degree and making sure that everything's perfect. Do you think we're then going to let little Johnny, go upstairs and play on the PlayStation, sit around with a beer on the sofa? Not a
yeah.
chance.
So it
And
is not your space. Well, your cabin is your space, the crew areas are yours, but the guest areas and the owners areas are for them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. That's their house, isn't it? It's
Hmm.
their house, and I think that's what people don't realise as well when you're on the dock. Sometimes I've had people walk up the pass rail saying, "Oh, where do I get a ticket for a tour?" I said, "What? No,
Yeah.
that's like me knocking on your house door saying, "Can I have a
Wanna
look
come have a
around
look
your house?
around?
This is a nice house. Can I have a look around?" No, you can't. They're off.
Yeah.
And so yeah, no, you don't generally. I've never used a guest jacuzzi, and I wouldn't want to. You know, even when sometimes you're invited to sit down as captain. Occasionally, you might get invited to sit down for dinner with the guests and stuff, but you're never going to be that relaxed. You're always at work. You're always, certainly as captain, you're always responsible for the vessel as well, and hopefully the crew take on that responsibility too. That as a crew, you are responsible for that environment. The interiors of the boat, they're generally very expensive
Yeah.
interiors. They're inevitably designed by an interior designer, and the materials involved can be very expensive, and we spend all of our time looking after them, making sure they don't get damaged. So yeah, okay, perhaps you might be able to use the outside spaces for things like doing your yoga or weight strength training and stuff like that. But yeah, no, you won't be getting to use the interior ever. So cool. I think that was all the questions that we talked about. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss?
No, I think that kind of covered a lot of like how kind of getting in the industry, the training route, it's a long-term career, and that's kind of what UKSA is massively a believer in, is we're actually setting people up for careers in the maritime industry, and it's so important to us. And a big part of my role is then maintaining those relationships after the graduates leave, staying in touch, encouraging them to progress when they're ready, but working with them on a one-to-one basis to kind of come up with their individual plans to come back, because that's the best way to do it, is actually having that time with them. We spend a lot of time at events down in Antibes, Palma, actually catching up with the students and kind of seeing how we can support them moving forward.
Yeah, good, great. Yeah, I think it's a great industry, and otherwise I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
And I think it's also interesting. as we touched on earlier, the satellite industries and people that it affects in a positive way generally. You
Yeah.
know, so they're like, if I have a job, I get to buy a new car every 3 years, and then the guy who sells the car, you know, it's economics, isn't it? You know, and he gets to sell me a car, and then he gets to go shopping and buy food. You know, so it's the trickle down effect of the industry, but
Yeah.
not just the crew that work on the boats. It's like just down the road from here, there's a company called Silver Lining who make the furniture, and they make some of the best furniture in the world, and a lot of that goes onto yachts.
Yeah.
But there's other people, there's other companies that make the fenders, the tenders. You know, you've got Pasco Tenders down in Southampton, and they make
Yeah. We
incredible
work
yachts.
with Heirlooms Linens, so they supply our linens for our interior course. So again, that's another company that we work with. We work with the family office, we work with Crew Pass, we work with Prudential. So there's all these other companies that people don't really know about or think of that are then
Yeah,
actually
yacht
supporting
management companies.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. There's crew payroll, IT
Hmm.
support. I think there's a huge amount outside the industry, and I think other people around the industry as well will look at this and think, "Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't actually thought of that either." So
Yeah. Because we support people back into shore-based roles as well. So once they've kind of
yeah,
had enough of the time in the industry, last year I supported one of our cadets back into the shore-based role. He ended up working for Burgess,
oh great,
doing an internship. It started off as 3 weeks and got extended for the entire summer. So we do kind of support people that are looking to move home as well, because, like you said, you do kind of reach that age where you do want to come home.
yeah. No, great. Cool. Right. Well, great. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
I
thank
really
you. Yeah,
appreciate it. It's really great to talk to you. And maybe we'll catch up soon at the boat show somewhere, I'm sure.
yeah, I'd love that.
Great. Okay. Right.
Perfect.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.